Brad Bayne of 4Gen Logistics was an HDT Truck Fleet Innovator in 2023, working on the Southern California company's ambitious plan to become an all-zero emissions drayage fleet. I caught up with him recently to get a progress report. This is Deborah Lockridge, and on this episode of HDT Talks Trucking, we'll learn more about the lessons Brad Bayne has learned on his zero-emissions truck journey. Currently, 4Gen is running 64 battery electric trucks. It also has 15 hydrogen fuel cell trucks from Nikola, but with Nikola's bankruptcy, those are kind of in limbo. The company plans to get its remaining 2 natural gas and 2 diesel trucks out of its California operations by the end of the year in order to reach its goal of being totally zero emissions in 2025. Brad told me that this has been one of the toughest, most challenging journeys he's ever been a part of, but also one of the most rewarding now that the company's mostly up and running and adjusting to life with battery electric trucks versus diesels. He also told me that a lot of customers want to have their freight transported with zero-emission trucks, but they're not too keen on paying more for it. With costs going up for everything and a freight recession keeping rates down, I asked Brad about what he's doing to keep costs down with these zero-emission trucks.
We're very focused on expense control, which is all about, flip turn and controlling our chargers and helping us manage the electricity cost portion. And then we've seen really good success on the maintenance side. Really the only thing that, and we knew about this going in, it's just been a little bit more aggressive than we thought, is just the wear on the tires on the battery electrics. And it was even more so on the Nikolas. On the hydrogen fuel cells that were turned up to 10,000 pounds of torque. So we were wearing through tires pretty quickly on those. The drivers loved it, especially when they were pulling a grade at 55 going by all the diesel guys in the right lane. But,
So you discovered that EVs are harder on tires. How do you address that?
Yeah, the good news from the Volvo standpoint is we've had the ability to kind of adjust the torque that's happening, so we're pretty much running very similar to what a diesel would do. So it's still about driver education. That's where it all starts with is, just because a truck will go 0 to 50 bobtailing or with a loaded trailer on the back at the same speed doesn't mean we need to do that. So, it's driver education, getting them out and showing them what's happened when we're not driving correctly, and getting them to buy in and invest in the fact that we need them to drive a certain way. And for the most part, I think our drivers are really bought into that. They kind of challenge themselves now to, get the most regen energy in a day, or really focus on that one pedal driving to extend their range throughout the day. And a big part of that comes with, pretty much accelerating like you would in a diesel truck and doing all those normal things. So that's helped our tire wear. But on the expense side of it, the good news is our overall maintenance expense is very good, which we anticipated it would going in without a combustion engine. So that's helping. And then we just have a pattern where we're rotating tires a little bit differently than maybe we have in the past to try to extend the life. And we're just getting as creative as we can to try to get as much life. We're never going to get 70, 80, 90,000 miles out of drive tires like we did on a diesel, but how can we push that to, 30 or 40,000 miles on those drive tires?
What does require maintenance on a battery electric truck other than the tires?
Really, it's, you got your coolant levels that you're very focused on. I guess you could call from the engine perspective. But of course, anything that has an orange cable on it, we're very well versed in not touching. We've actually seen the results of some squirrels touching that, so they're very invested in the fact that they're not going to touch it. And then you have your other normal maintenance stuff as it relates to brakes and things of that nature that, we have a maintenance mechanic on site in Rialto that's focused on that. So he's looking at that stuff and keeping up on that. But other than that, it's really, a lot about fluid levels. And there's some maintenance internally that's all part of our warranty with the manufacturer, so they're taking care of that part about it. But So really on a daily basis, you're going through your pre-trip, checking brakes, tires, fluid levels, which is all the different radiators that help keep the truck cool, just stuff like that.
A couple of years ago when we were first starting to really talk about electric trucks, and there was speculation that with that regen braking, perhaps the brake pads would not would last longer. Have you seen that at all?
We absolutely believe they will, because when I get the opportunity to be in the trucks, if you're going the most aggressive regen braking, you ultimately hardly ever need to use a brake unless you're coming to an absolute complete stop. So right at the end, you're already slowed down. You're using that brake. So for us, we're only starting to see 30, 35,000 miles, 40,000 miles on these trucks. So we haven't stretched them out yet to see what the life of the brake pads are going to be, but ultimately I know they're going to be better because we're just not using that brake very much throughout the day.
What are some of the other big lessons that you've learned? Because you were one of the first people you were with part of the Volvo Lights program, got one of those first electric Volvos in the ports. What are some of the other lessons that you've learned? You said it's something new every day, but what are kind of the big things that come to mind?
Well, I could probably write a novel on this one. But, some of the big things right out of the gate is we just understand the process now. So when I'm speaking to a lot of other carriers, and not so much right now because there's not a lot of people looking to make the move, but before they just wanted to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. Like, what did you learn? How do we even start the process? So we've definitely learned what that needs to look like and how you need to get your utilities involved very early on, even really before the OEM and the truck side of it, just from an infrastructure perspective. I think the other thing is important to learn is sometimes free is too good to be true. So make sure that you're choosing your vendors and your contractors that you're dealing with. Maybe we would do it differently, and we actually we're already in design phase for our second phase of charging at both of our locations. So we went a whole different route as related to picking a vendor that we're using for phase 2. So that's definitely a big piece, because there's a lot of people coming into the market from a construction side, from the actual charging equipment side, from the charger management software side. It's really taking the time to do your due diligence, and especially on the contractor side, make sure you find someone who's done big projects like we're doing, has relationships with the utilities, which is extremely important, and you're able to see their work, see what they've done at other places. So that's been a big learning lesson for us on the infrastructure side. I think the other cool thing that we've kind of experienced is just how much the dealers have emphasized, and once again, especially Volvo, just creating a team within their dealer network and within the Volvo zero-emission group to help customers navigate this whole process. They've put in support systems not just to help them find what truck makes sense for them, but if they do decide to go battery electric, how that process looks from obtaining the grants and navigating through that process, and helping them all the way through. And then of course the end result is all the driver training that they're committed to do and help drivers learn how to drive this new technology. So that's been a cool learning experience that we've kind of seen throughout our growth, what some of the OEMs have done, which is a very important piece. And I think, one of the things that I stress, and we did this from the get-go, so it's not really a learning experience for us, but we've talked about this before, Deborah, is how we got the drivers involved early on. And I think that's a key to any company, and I stress that to anybody I'm talking to. Get your drivers involved, get them to the ride and drive events, let them understand the technology. And you get those older guys and gals that have been in diesel trucks forever. They're like, I'm not interested in a battery electric truck. But I can tell you right now, once again, 95% of our drivers would probably be real hesitant to go back into a diesel right now. So once you get them in it, they understand it, they learn it, they really love that technology.
What about on the infrastructure? I know that's been one of the things with electric trucks. It's like it's not just buying a truck and, fueling it traditionally. You've got a whole new method of giving them more energy. What are some of the things that you face on that infrastructure side, and maybe some things you would do differently, or you are doing differently with the next route?
I had this idea when we did phase one until I actually showed up at the site one day and they've dug the holes to lay the conduit, and I'm like, holy crap, this is a much bigger project than I thought it was going to be. And the conduit is, an 8-inch conduit, not what you're normally thinking for any kind of project. But so from that perspective, when we went to phase two, we were able to kind of not only plan our layout, but just how we expect the project to unfold once they get started. So that's been a big piece that we've learned with phase one. And we learned maybe when you, ideally, once again, it goes back to getting your utilities involved early. You may have this idea, this is where you want your charging to go, but after you have a conversation with the utility, you realize, well, that's not really going to work. So we need to move it over here or potentially move it to a whole other yard. So we were very focused on that with phase two with the utilities. Like, you tell us where the power's at, what's the easiest way to get it to the property, and then we'll figure out how to lay out our design. So that's definitely been a big help for both locations. We had this grand idea in our Long Beach that's going to be 60 dispensers when it's done, that we're just going to take the outer part of our fence, which kind of semicircles around, and it's just going to be this massive charging infrastructure site. Well, when we finished phase one at the bottom end where we were going to start phase two, we hit water at 2 feet because we're so close to the ocean. So we learned very quickly that we're not going to have to de-water all that area to put in infrastructure. So we totally redesigned where we're putting the second phase of our chargers to not have to deal with the water. So a lot of those experiences doing it once have taught us some really great things to help us kind of streamline the process and do it much more efficiently for phase two.
How long is it taking to recharge the trucks? I think when we talked a couple years ago, there were questions about sort of the efficiency of being able to turn the trucks. Couldn't do that quickly like you had with diesel.
No, absolutely. That's still a very big part of the process. The good news for us is we keep all of our Kenworth first generation trucks in the port, so they're only doing 40, 50 miles a day, so they're not using but maybe half the charge. They have a legit range loaded of about 100 miles, but they only have a charging rate of 125 kilowatts an hour. So the good news is that can still be done in 2 hours with our chargers because they're usually at 40 or 50% battery level. So that works out pretty well. Luckily, with freight being down a little bit, we haven't had to do a whole lot of slip seating, which has been beneficial. But on the Volvo side, of course, I get alerts all day long of guys getting to 10% or 5% battery level or 8% battery level. So I get range anxiety, but they're not getting range anxiety because they've figured it out. So they know it's crazy, and drivers always adapt this way, but they understand how far they can stretch that truck. So I think since we've had all the trucks running, which is getting close to a year, we've had 2, maybe 3 times where somebody's ran out of juice and was parked on the side of the road. So I'll take that as a success compared to what we thought going in. And then when we get the Volvos back to charge, once again, we haven't been slip seating a lot of them, but we're getting to a point where we're going to have to start doing that. So a couple things are going to happen. We got to adjust first and second shift schedules because we got to leave us a little bit of time in between. The great news is the Volvos will charge up to 250, and I've actually seen rates as high as 230 going into the truck. So in theory, we need a couple of hours to get them back to where we need them to be. So that's the good news about the Volvo. The other good news is a lot of these trucks, like the new Kenworth truck, I think, don't hold me to this, but charges at close to 400 kilowatts an hour. So all of those improvements that are coming are going to help us. And, kind of going back to a question we were just talking about, as far as the phase two, we're building in some megawatt charging capabilities within phase 2. So as that charging capability continues to increase, we'll have the ability to take advantage of it. So that in those kind of situations, if we could charge a truck at a megawatt, we could slip seat all day long, because we're probably looking at 45 minutes to get a full charge if you're all the way down to zero. So we're making it work. We knew going in we'd have to kind of adjust the way we go about our daily business, but luckily for us, probably 80% of our loads can be delivered on a single charge as it relates to the Volvos. So we're doing 150 to probably 300 miles a day, and those longer runs, we get guys who will come back to the yard and take their 30-minute break and they get on the charger, and that's all the juice they need to get through the rest of the day. Certain situations, we keep a couple of extra trucks in Long Beach, and maybe they have a really long run out to Riverside or Beaumont or something to deliver to a customer coming out of the ports. They'll just go over and swap trucks out. It's for us, it's very convenient. It's in kind of on route. Yes, we do have a little bit of lost time as they switch out their trucks, but it's worked. And once again, we knew there'd be some changes to how we had to conduct business, and we've worked through those. And we're not as efficient as we need to be, but we'll continue to improve that every day.
But you're getting there, learning as you go along. You mentioned the hydrogen fuel cell trucks and Nikola closing its doors. You're still figuring out what's going to happen there, but just in general, what are your thoughts on hydrogen fuel cell technology? Is it something that we should be pursuing more?
To me, that's the way. Our drivers really love the Nikola trucks, even though they were cab over design. That was my big thing, is just the ingress, egress, and the cab over piece of it. But man, our drivers loved them. I literally had some battery electric guys that I said, hey, I need you to take these trucks for a while and see what you think. And they were like, man, I really don't want to do that. And then they did it, and I couldn't get them out. I couldn't get them out of the hydrogen truck back in the battery electric. And some of that came because they didn't have to worry about fueling throughout the day because of the range that the Nikolas had. So that was good. But the trucks were very nice. They rode big, comfy cabs, cool technology. They rode really nice. They did have a little shorter turning radius and some tight areas in the yards and the ports. So they enjoyed all that. So ultimately, I'm a huge fan of hydrogen. And I know from having to work behind the scenes to find a source for hydrogen and figure out how we're going to take, maintenance these trucks. There's a lot of very big companies very focused on hydrogen supply, because they're approaching us. I probably talked to 2 or 3 of them a week. Hey, we can get you hydrogen. We can get it for you cheaper than you think, and we just need some commitments. And what do you think? For us, unfortunately, that truck we have is a first generation truck, so we knew there'd be some issues going in. And most of the issues are not mechanical, they're software related. So right now, no one has that software. No one has that ability to plug in and see what's going on with that air. So the last thing we wanted to do was have shut down the truck immediately in 8 p.m. in the port and have to get it towed out, because then all of that expense is on us. It's not on Nikola anymore because they're not there to maintenance and support that. So we went from a very subsidized, good price of hydrogen to overnight. If we wanted to continue running, we had to go to Shell and pay $28 a kilogram, which in diesel equivalent is about $28 for a gallon of diesel. So needless to say, that wasn't going to happen. It's put a little bit of a strain on us not running those trucks. But I love what they were doing with hydrogen, and I was part of their customer council too, and I saw what they were planning for their next generation truck, and it was probably one of the coolest things that I'd ever had the chance to see, and what it was going to be like, and where they were going with ingress and egress, and the weight of the truck and the range of the truck was very exciting. So definitely was disappointed when it didn't work, and I hope I don't end up with 15 very expensive lawn ornaments.
All right. Is anything else that you would share with other fleets about adopting electric trucks? As you said, not something necessarily people are looking at right this minute, but you do have people that are looking more toward the future. What's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately is just know going in, battery electric is not for everyone. It works extremely well for our duty cycles and for us being a drayage company in California, but it's not for everyone, so always go in with that mindset. But then really understand how you want to use these trucks. So when you sit down with the OEMs, they got some really good modeling programs they've put together, and they'll walk you through your route. The weights you're doing, the stops you're doing, all of that stuff. So really dive into what works best for your operation is an important piece. Don't just get caught up in the fact that, hey, I got to go battery electric. This is what they're mandating we do, because it ultimately might not work for you. So, of course, if you're looking to do it at scale and need your own charging infrastructure, make sure you're having those conversations with your utilities early, because I'm hearing day after day after day, there's a lot of companies who have 4 to 5 year build outs just from the utility perspective to even get power to their site, which is not good for anyone. But the good news is, there's some companies coming on that are putting in commercial charging sites in Southern California. Mm-hmm. Of course, you've probably heard of the Forum Mobilities and some of the other trucks and charging as service companies that are up and live, and I think there's some people taking advantage of that. So there's some different ways to enter the market now to where maybe you don't have that big capital expenditure off the get-go. So that's nice to see that there's options out there for carriers who want to get into it but don't want to spend a whole bunch of money to do it.
Any future plans at this point? Or are you just kind of trying to wait and see what happens with some stuff?
Yeah, really for us, it's, we're focused on phase 2 of charging. That's slowed down a little bit too. We've had some holdups with some grant opportunities. So once again, another thing that could use some improvement in the state of California is how they work through their grants and how fast they process them. So that's really the big thing on the list. The other thing is maybe potentially upgrading to some new generation Kenworths, but that will not be in addition to, that will be replacing some of what we have. So that's really for us. We're positioned very well from a vehicle count to support, probably our growth for the next 12 to 18 months. And then our duty cycle, we'll probably run these things 4 to 5 years is what we're planning on. And I'd like to say I know what's going to be going on in the zero emission space in 3 or 4 years, but we don't. So we're going to hope that when it comes time to get new ones, we're going to hope the technology is even better and trucks have more range and they're lighter and all of those good things are going to happen. So, but for us, it's just really focused on phase 2 of charging, maybe trading some Kenworths and kind of status quo for us through the end of 26 at least.
All right, great. Well, Brad, thanks so much. It's so good to have you catching up with this on your trucks. I've been meaning to catch up with you for a while and see how the whole project was going. So, again, that was Brad Bayne. He's Vice President of Strategic Initiatives at 4Gen Logistics and a 2023 HDT Truck Fleet Innovator. I'm Deborah Lockridge. Thanks for joining us for this episode of HDT Talks Trucking. Don't forget to subscribe to HDT Talks Trucking on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. And if you haven't yet, sign up for the Heavy Duty Trucking e-newsletter on our website.